First of all, I won in 2020 by a lot, okay? Let's get that straight. I won in 2020.
Right, okay, so that of course was Donald Trump. He used to be the president of the United States. This was right before Joe Biden. It was not Bret Baier, but sitting across from him was Bret Baier, and this is Bret Baier's reaction to Donald Trump's claims, as I mentioned, of a rigged election.
You take a look at Truth to Vote, where they have people stuffing the ballot boxes on tapes, or let's go to recent. Well, wait a minute. Let's go to recent. FBI Twitter. Let's go to recent. The 51 agents, all corrupt stuff, Bret.
Understand about the Hunter Biden.
No, but that's cheating on the election. But that's cheating on the election.
You lost the 2020 election.
Bret, you take a look at all of the stuffed ballots. You take a look at all of the things, including things like the 51 intelligence agents.
There were recounts in all of the swing states. There was not significant widespread.
We're trying to get recounts, real recounts, not just numbers of votes.
Widespread corruption. There was not a sense of that. There were lawsuits, more than 50 of them, by your lawyers. Some in front of judges that you appointed.
Look at Wisconsin.
That came out with no evidence.
Wisconsin has practically admitted it was rigged. Other states are doing the same right now, and it's continuing on.
There have been reviews of every potential case of voter fraud in 6 battleground states, and they found fewer than 475 cases.
You know why? Because they didn't look at the right things.
Okay, are you going to be
counting? They were counting ballots, not the authenticity of the ballot. The ballots were fake ballots.
Wow. You know, I spent a good deal of time for this network and other ones in the field talking to Trump supporters, and they sound just like, you'll be shocked to know, Donald Trump. You don't get to hear him talk much about the election anymore, other than just calling it a rigged election whenever he gets on a stage. He doesn't go as deep as he did there with Bret Baier, but it's exactly what I hear from these voters in the field, Cenk. People who are saying that, you know, they were counting, making things up, like it's not about the ballots, it's the fake ballots, saying that Wisconsin has practically admitted. Here's some news. Wisconsin has not come close to admitting anything about fraud. What they did is they recounted and they recertified, and they did all the things which the other 49 states are required to do, which is count the ballots, make sure that they are authentic. There were, you know, a handful. There was a handful of fraud, mostly hurting Republicans who were not registered, people not registered voting for Republicans. That was it. So Donald Trump sounds just like the people that he wants to follow.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's embarrassing, right? So he's like, they might have won on the ballots, but we won on the stuffed ballots and the stuffed peppers. We had them all. We had them all. We had 51 lawyers. No, you had no answer. Bret Baier, host on Fox News, says to you, you had over 50 cases where your lawyers got to present evidence and you presented 0 evidence because there is no evidence. So you can tell me all about the stuffed peppers and the banana peppers now, okay? But that doesn't make any difference. But this lunatic's still talking about we're gonna get new recounts. How many years? It's like 3 years later, dude. Like, you're not gonna get any more recounts. Georgia recounted like 12 times. It's hyperbole, but not by much. They did a hand recount. I mean, like, they had Trump's aunt recount. They did 100 recounts in all these states. You had all of that.
And what he says about Wisconsin that I just said is such a lie. They have not come close to admitting anything because there's nothing to admit. They gave the results of that election and Joe Biden won. I mean, it's astonishing. Trump has yet, Cenk, to be held accountable for this. We have not, and maybe he'll be held accountable in 2024. We have yet to see. Bret Baier is certainly going to be held accountable, but by I think unfortunately, by a lot of the people that support Donald Trump. But Bret Baier going to a Trump rally is going to be an interesting thing after this election. But one person, and it ties to a little bit of news today, that is being held accountable or possibly accountable is John Eastman. You'll recall he's the one who was a lawyer for the president, the former president at the time, and he tried to convince Mike Pence. He's the one who went in to try and convince the vice president at that time not to certify the election. Now it's John Eastman who has to sit before the California Legal Board to try and save his law license and save himself from being disbarred. John Eastman set to face disciplinary hearings starting today in Los Angeles. The counsel for the State Bar of California is asking the court to revoke Eastman's license to practice law in the state state. Eastman faces 11 disciplinary charges. The disciplinary hearings before the state bar court seeking Eastman's disbarment are expected to last at least 8 days. The court will determine whether Eastman's conduct qualifies for recommendation of a suspension or revocation of his law license. The fate of Eastman's law license then falls into the hands of the California Supreme Court. So you have somebody at least answering for a little bit of this rigged election stuff, Cenk.
Yeah, well, look, I'm mixed on this case, and you might be surprised by that. So why am I mixed? So Eastman was one of the worst in this fake elector scam that I think was the real coup. So I think there's a case to be made that he should be charged criminally. But there's two buts there. Number one, they should all be charged. Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump, all the people who took, Rudy Giuliani, that took part in the fake elector scheme. Actually, I'm not positive Giuliani did. They'd have to prove that in court, et cetera, right? So why are they going after Eastman, but they're not going after the guys who actually came up with the plot? He was, in essence, the lawyer for the plot, right? Well, because going after them criminally, everybody's gonna cry. The Republicans are gonna cry, the MAGA's gonna cry, and then Christopher Wray, now the head of the FBI, is a Republican, and they were already crying about him, so now he says, well, we're not really gonna go after them on those charges. Now, Jack Smith, the special counsel, still might do it. So I think that it makes sense to go after them all on the actual case. This is taking away his law license. It's kind of and it's very important to his life, obviously, but not a criminal charge, so it's a little bit different. Now, as a lawyer, I actually think he has the best argument out of all of those guys that I just named, because he gets to say, well, they asked me, how can I justify, this political position? And I gave him a legal theory. It was a tenuous one, and I said in the documents that it was tenuous.
Well, let's go to the tenuousness. I mean, it was, you can't use the word trumped up anymore, but it was fabricated stuff that he was giving to the vice president of the United States, who is the only person who can certify a national election. So that goes against what any bar in any of the 50 states could possibly say, right?
Yeah, so that to me is the key. If they have him saying something that is provably not true and he knows is not true, okay, which they might, because in one of the documents he says, basically there's a quote, near zero chance that he's right. Okay, so well, but on the other hand, if I'm his lawyer, I go, well, he said it, didn't he? He said I have a near zero chance of being right. So then it's up to the politicians to take what he's basically admitting in the document is a lie and see if they can make that lie work.
But Greg Jacob, who was Vice President Pence's lawyer at the time, is testifying against Eastman in Sacramento or wherever they're doing. No, I guess it's Los Angeles, and in front of the state bar, because he's saying that he was being supplied and advised by a lawyer to the president with false information. And that's the crux of why this person's being disbarred. It also doesn't mean that he's not gonna be charged criminally at a later time. I don't think it's gonna happen. But this is independent of justice. This is just the State Bar of California.
So in summation, if they can prove that he lied, yeah, you get disbarred for that, right? And so I'm glad that they're going through the proceeding. If I was part of the proceedings, I would keep an open mind on whether they could prove that he lied on purpose with intent, et cetera. But really, instead of charging the lawyer for the criminal conspiracy, you should charge the guys who did the conspiracy in the first place, and that's Trump and Navarro, et cetera. But that's too, politically incorrect. So they're not gonna do that. Instead, they're gonna disbar him. And by the way, last thing on it, I thought well, I don't know, if we're disbarring this guy, can you disbar John Yoo, the guy who wrote the torture memos, also filled with lies, encouraging the politicians to break the law, which torture was against the law. And then it turns out John Yoo's testifying for Eastman. It's I don't know, wait. Does that help him make his case? Look, this guy's a criminal too, and he didn't get disbarred. I doubt that's what he's gonna say, but it's an interesting witness for the defense. Let's put it that way.
Working against Eastman is the fact that he's got to go before the California bar and not, say, Oklahoma.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that All you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.